who trust him wholly find him wholly true. Stayed upon Jehovah, hearts are fully blessed, finding as he promised perfect peace and rest. Amen. Good singing this evening. Brother Ferry, would you open our service in prayer, please, sir?
Heavenly Father, we are so thankful to be able to gather today in your house to hear from your word. Father, we are thankful that you blessed us with a wonderful day. Now, Father, we ask that you open our hearts and our minds to the message that we will hear. We are so thankful for those that are here. Be with those who cannot be or are watching the live stream. And Father, give Daniel the words to say, and may you be blessed in the singing and all that is done this evening. And as always, it is in Jesus' name that we pray.
Amen. You may be seated. And if you'll turn over to hymn number 144. So I'm not pastor, obviously. You guys are aware of that. I think he already announced this, but he's in Constantinople. No. Harmony. I don't know why, but that's anyway. Moving on. Pastor Smith's church preaching tonight. He asked him to come down and preach. So he is preaching down there. And that leaves you guys with me. My apologies. But we will enjoy getting to worship our Lord together anyway. And we'll just pray a little bit longer and it'll be all right. Hymn number 144. Hymn 144. A mighty fortress is our God, a bulwark never failing, our helper he amid the flood of mortal ills prevailing. For still our ancient foe does seek to work us woe, his craft and power are great, and armed with cruel hate. On earth is not his equal. Did we in our own strength confide, our striving would be losing. We're not the dost ask who that may be. Christ Jesus, it is he, Lord Sabaoth, his name, from age to age the same, and he must win the battle. And though this world with devils filled should threaten to undo us, we will not fear, for God hath willed his truth to triumph through us. The prince of darkness grim, we tremble not for him, his rage we can endure, for lo, his doom is sure. One little word shall fell him, that word above all earthly powers, no thanks to them abideth. The Spirit and the gifts are ours, through him who with us sideth. Let's goods and kindreds go, this mortal life also, the body they may kill, God's truth abideth still, his kingdom is forever. All right, we need to sing that more often. I love that song, I really do. I We just don't sing it often enough, and so that gets a little awkward at some of those places like Sabaoth. But we'll have to work on that. Great song, great truce. I love how it walks you through it. We do the prayer request and all that afterwards. I'm trying to think, is there anything else we do before we get to the preaching? Questions. Great. All right. Anybody have a question? Yes, Brother Farnham.
Thank you. Okay, Isaiah chapter 7. And verse 23.
Oh boy.
Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, what does it mean? Or it says, where there were 1,000 vines at 1,000 silverlings. It's right in the middle of that verse.
So vines are obviously a place of farming, cultivating.
Yep.
Silverlings are similar in that they are agricultural. I can't tell you exactly what a silverling is at this second. Is that more or less what you're wanting to know? I can ask Pastor what a silverling is. I am not positive. I do know that the illustration is basically saying that where there was abundance, there will be briars. You find the blackberry bushes and the things that pop up wild, normally in places that are unkempt. You're finding the thorns and stuff in places that are not, where much idleness happens. And so as a result, you're going from a place of potential harvest to a place of unfruitfulness.
Okay. Isaiah 13, and near the end of the chapter, it speaks of wild beasts and doleful creatures that will dwell. It sounds like it's all blah and negative. And then in chapter 22 it says, and dragons in their pleasant palaces.
Yes.
Why is everything else drab and they're living fancy?
What verse was 22?
22. It's the last verse of the chapter.
Oh, I thought you said chapter 22. I was changing over.
13. Chapter 13.
And verse 22. I'm sorry. I thought you said.
It's okay.
Just changed chapters on me. And your first verses were.
Well, say 20 and 21.
Okay.
Everything in they're doleful creatures. It says. And it sounds like a blah, yucky, but then it speaks of the dragons in their pleasant palaces.
And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees' excellency shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. By the way, did anybody look and see this summer a new study came out or new findings came out over in over in the area of Sodom and Gomorrah? They found an area that. It was a town. It was a town of prominence, probably over 30,000 people, which in those days would have been a sizable city. Civilizations build on top and try to build on top. But where it basically was essentially stopping was a place that was odd to them because it was scorched. It was burned. And they say a solar flare happened. Basically, an asteroid would have come so close into the asteroid, a huge place would have come down into our atmosphere, and it would have created a temperature influx that within seconds would have gone up to 500 degrees. Parts of the asteroid could have fallen down and start taking things. People would be melting at those temperatures. But they found this on this city, and this city literally was demolished. Minerals were cooked that were in the ground. It's something that they say. And the Smithsonian, the paper I read from the Smithsonian, talked about this event as probably the source of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, So, can't give the Bible any credit, but this is probably where they got the idea of it. And it's like, yeah, it's probably, Sodom and Gomorrah. But yeah, it wiped out everything that was in that general area. Sister city would have been totally demolished with the same thing. But I was just kind of neat. I was like, once again, science proves the Bible, or that's, I guess, more archaeology than it is science, but science goes into what happened there. But it was kind of cool. But I mentioned that because it mentioned Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction. It's talking about Babylon. Babylon is a place of brilliance. In fact, in that verse 19, it's talking the glory of the kingdoms. Babylon's, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It's one of the premier, right up there with Rome. And even some would argue that Rome was not as brilliant or as beautiful as Babylon was in its glory. Rome was kind of more, they would say, would be more useful, less glorious, more functional, less beauty. But they're saying that Babylon is going to be torn down as Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be in heaven, neither shall it dwell in the generation to generation, neither shall their Arabian pitch their tents there. Basically saying nastiness, but it's saying, but the wild beasts of the desert shall lie there. So basically, where once was a palace of kings and greatness, now is going to be the palace of dragons. It's now going to be the palace of animals. The beasts of the field will dwell there. And so that's what it's saying. It's trying to throw down the initial brilliance of Babylon. It's now saying you're going to be desolate, but the animals will consider this their kingdom now. That's where he's going with it.
All right, one more. Isaiah 19, and starting in verse 22. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, it speaks about the Lord shall smite Egypt and then heal it. And then in chapter 20, it's destroyed again. What is the purpose of smiting, healing, and I guess smiting again down at the beginning of verse 20?
Okay. Brother, which chapter was it again? Because I'm
19.
Not 19. Okay. My brain is somehow mixing these chapters. I'm just... you're seeing the parallels to Moses' day. I believe this is talking, and I'd have to... The calling out of captivity from there. So what are you? What your asking? Your question was just like, and
in chapter 22 of 19, it says, "And the Lord shall smite Egypt; he shall smite and heal it, and they shall return even to the Lord, and he shall be entreated of them and shall heal them." But then you go down further at the beginning of chapter 20, and Egypt is destroyed again. And I'm asking, what is the reason for this to smite, heal, and smite, back and forth like that? Does that have some purpose or significance?
Normally when God's judging a nation, it's it's because of a couple things. One, his people are there and he's trying to teach his people a lesson. Or two, those people have dealings with his people, and sometimes his judgment will come when they deal, unjustly with his people. As far as why he does it, the purpose of it, well, he'll bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it has to do with their relationship to the children of Israel. As far as Egypt goes, that would be my simple explanation, but I can...
I think it's Assyria that comes against them the second time,
Mm-hmm.
but I could be wrong.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right. We are in Lamentations. Going through this, somewhat the chapter, not the whole thing. I'll skip around a little bit. I think that Christianity is in a state of disrepair, partially because we have, much like Demas, esteemed the things of this world to be more than what we think God will give us. We're putting a premium on the temporal and a very minor amount on the eternal. We save for retirement. I tell you, I almost feel guilty at my age saving for retirement. Why? Well, I truthfully believe the Lord's coming back before I ever am going to have to worry about that 401k. I really do. I don't think it's... I'm not saying... But again, to be a good steward, I'm trying to make sure I'm doing something to put back for that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, all of this could go towards missions. All of this could be... There's people that need it now, and if he does come back, I'm going to feel pretty stupid sitting on whatever or ends up in there. Right now, obviously, it's not like, a lot. But it is. But that's in the back of my mind where it's like, God's coming back. So where are my thoughts on this? That's on financial gain. But how many of our thoughts ever turn to what are we banking in heaven? I mean, the reality is, in this earth we have temporary stuff, and yes, we have to subsist. So I'm not telling you, to unless God tells you to sell all that you have, and then just give it to the Lord and let Him use it for that. If God tells you to do that, by the way, He's going to take care of you. That's the way it's going to go. But that's going to be an extremely rare statement that God makes on those things. I see Demas, and I see someone who valued things that pleased him. I saw, and I'm going to preach this at some point because it's just too good not to, that the same men who fished all night catching nothing were the same men that could not pray for an hour in the garden. That was something that came across, and I saw that, and I'm like, that's too good not to preach. Because, I mean, when it was something that they're interested in, when it's something that their passion is in, yes, we'll do it all night, even with no results. And I think any fisherman knows that that's, not that uncommon. You'll have days where they're just not biting. But they keep at it. Why? Because it's something they like. If it was shooting for guys, even if we're not hitting the target, we're going to keep putting rounds downrange because it's a lot of fun. I tell you, it's getting to be expensive fun anymore, I'm telling you. I looked, a box of 20 shells could be as much. Now, again, I found them less expensive, but I said no to the cost of like 50-some for a box of 20, and I was like, whew, I can't justify. I mean, I got a sight in where I'm at with the rifle, so, by the time you put box of shells downrange, you spent $50. I'm like, man, the beef is sounding a whole lot cheaper. At this point, it's just the way it is. So instead, I made the investment and bought a cheap bore scope, so I can maybe put a couple rounds down and found cheaper ammo to be able to not invest that much per shell downrange. But we'll do it because it's fun, and it is fun. It's great fun. But the same people, I often wonder, I don't tell the teenagers what the activity is. I make it a habit not to. I might warn them if we're going to do something that's way off course, just because. Why? I don't think it should matter whether we're having a prayer night, or whether we're having a cleaning night, or whether we're having softball outside. I think you should come with the right attitude, and I think you should participate because we're doing it as an activity for the Lord. Whatever it is, have a good attitude and let's participate. It might not be your favorite thing we're doing. Listen, cleaning nights are never everybody's favorite, all right? Never. Although I've had some fantastic times at teen nights when we were cleaning. I'll never forget when we were putting down the hardwood floors and we've got like screw guns, drills, and nail guns in teenagers' hands that are looking at me like, you're insane. And we finished helping with some of this. They did very little of that. It ended up being more sweeping and cleaning. But giving them an opportunity to fire one of those was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. Nobody shot themselves with a nail, so we've had a successful night. But I have fun doing those service things. But I think it's incredibly important because it keeps in mind that there's things beyond just your pleasure why you come to things. If you only come to the things that you like, you're a poor Christian. All right? It's just not, that's not what it's about. It's not about you. You've started to make church about yourself and what you like, and it's not about that. It's about serving the Lord, right? You would say we're here to worship the Lord. I was made to worship the Lord, right? It's a song. But you have made it about worshiping you, and you don't like it, you stop showing up. Well, we learned whose God you really serve. I understand there's reasons for missing things, but it's not because you don't like the activity, all right? But these men, they can't pray for an hour. I always loved going to Pastor Schwartz's. He would have a prayer meeting. It would start normally around 8 o'clock. He hasn't done it for a few years. He would do it before the tent meeting, and then afterwards he would do it a few years just for revivals in the area in general, and invite everyone from the area to go to this prayer meeting. I love those days, especially the days of the tent revival, because you actually got a lot of people to show up just to pray. There's no preaching. There was times he would have breaks of fellowship, but we would be there 3 or 4 hours just to pray. That was beautiful. That was wonderful. Now, I tell the teens, we're going to have a 3-hour prayer meeting. How many show up? But listen, the reaction should not be any different than that to volleyball. As Christians, Pastor says tonight, we're just going to take the next couple hours to pray. That's okay. That's our job. Let's do it, right? But, we have gotten into a place where it's not about God anymore. It's about us and what we like. And so as a result, we veto that. We're gonna do what we want to do instead. We're in Lamentations 3. Lamentations is a reality check book. I think that, again, we value the wrong things, which has put us into a realm of when God does something we don't like, He's not fair. When He does, because here's the danger when you start picking and choosing what you're going to do. And again, there's reasons why you miss certain things. I get that. There's sometimes you just can't. My sister potentially is going to have a child maybe tonight. She's been having some interesting stuff. Might not have it tonight, but if she's going into labor, they're not going to be in church. Can I tell you that? Or at least I would hope not. All right? I would hope not. Teaching a class would be a different kind of, no. She doesn't, it's just not going to be good. She's not teaching tonight no matter what. I know that, all right? So that's not on the schedule. But, you understand there are reasons to not be at the church on the time appointed. We like to use excuses, though. Things that we could do on other days, we just choose to not. And we like to find other things to occupy us. And when it becomes your personal preference, and I prefer to do this over going to church, that's when you enter into sin and carnality, and you are being a lousy Christian, putting it bluntly. And when you enter into that realm of preference, then when God does something you don't like, he has then wronged you. Versus just having part of a plan and you're needing to submit to this. A huge one on this is the loss of loved ones. I'm telling you. It's one of the hardest things we face here on this earth is the separation and death from loved ones. When somebody passes away, you just look for them, right? There's times when you expect them to be there. Or every time I walk into my grandma's house, Grandpa's chairs, you go straight and it's off to the right. And so he's always sitting there when we get in, unless it was going to be a really late night and then he's in bed. But he would always be there. That'd be the first place you'd see him, whether it was waking up in the morning or whether it was you'd see him there. So when I walk in, you kind of look and you expect to see someone there. Even years later, it doesn't go away. Grandpa Horn, it's the same thing. I think of different things that they would say. I had somebody give an insult at work to a coworker, and it brought to mind instantly my grandpa's insult, which was almost always, when was the last time you were drop kicked? And he had a way with him. But things bring back memories, and all of a sudden it hurts a little bit, and then yet at the same time you enjoy the memory. And so these things come up, and you think it's not fair that I don't have them with me in this moment. To share in this. And it's easy to get bitter on some of those things. And then other times, maybe it's you lose a job. Maybe it's that somebody falls away from the faith, and you're like, well, God was not faithful. And so you get bitter over somebody else leaving the faith that they have served. There's a lot of things that you can put down as things that you're thinking, and God's fairness is being questioned then in your mind. And it's because you have found yourself in a realm where God is supposed to be serving at your pleasure versus you serving Him at His pleasure. The symptoms of it are, for instance, you choosing to not be in church for other things when you choose that there's something more important, or not more important, something that you prefer over church, more important. Again, there are reasons where you cannot make it. Those reasons are never preferences. I had teenagers early in the first time I helped with the youth group, that they were gone every 2 weeks. They had to go to families, and so they were in Ohio, that way far away place. But they were legitimately a couple hours away. And so as a result, they weren't able to be here. And they're like, are you going to hold that against me and any of the stuff? And we didn't do what we do now, but we would do a thing where perfect attendance gets to do this for this month or something, as we were trying to encourage them to be faithful. And it's like, no, I'm not an idiot. I can't. It's not like you're making the choice to go. When it's your choice, yeah, absolutely, you're going to get the absolute consequences of your actions. But I'm telling you, I can't be absolute. I can't. There's ridiculousness levels, and you know what that is. People just like to try and get their way by making it seem like you're being ridiculous. There's nothing new under the sun. But we question God, and we got to be very careful with this. Jeremiah wrote Lamentations, the weeping prophet. Lamentations, to lament, sorrow, things that are going poorly. This is a sad book. If you're looking for God to give you peace, and if you're looking for God to give you comfort, and you're looking for God to give you joy, Lamentations might not be the book for you. Read Psalms, all right? Find something when God helps out David. Read about the resurrection. That would be a great thing to go to. But not Lamentations, all right? Lamentations, read that in studying. It's a great thing. It is better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting, the Bible tells us. I think parents make a mistake when they do not allow their kids to go to funerals, especially for family members. I think there's a lesson that needs to be taught through those moments, And by shielding them from that, they don't learn about loss. They don't learn about separation. That's an awesome opportunity to talk to them about about the second death. It's an awesome opportunity to talk to them about being reborn and how that person is alive and in heaven if they've accepted Christ. And a beautiful thing and a beautiful moment. He said in verse 1, I am the man that hath seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He hath led me and brought me into darkness, but not into light. Talking about himself, God put Jeremiah through some pretty rough stuff. He basically had to tell his nation at one point, don't fight the oncoming enemy because you're all going to die, and just submit to the punishment God is bringing down for our sins. How would you feel if China's invading? There was a video on how China could actually win a war against the United States. That's brought about a lot by the fear of their missile test, and that was... They almost hit their target, 24 miles. I mean, that's not that far off, is it? I think Hiroshima and Nagasaki might still have some survivors if they we had missed by 24 miles. But, moving on. Not bad for something that had to circle the globe and then hit a target. But anyway, we, by the way, don't have that technology. I find it astounding they beat us on this to this degree of precision. 24 miles is actually pretty good considering what it had to do. And that it was made in China. But he had to go in front, and basically if China was invading, go and tell all of America, with all our rifles and all of our people, if anybody ever invaded the U.S., you've got, like the largest army in the world in Texas, and the 6th and 7th in between Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, I believe. It's just, you figure out the people that own rifles. There's going to be a massive army. But he's now be the guy that's got to stand in front of that group and say, lay down your arms, don't fight. God's judgment's on us, just let it happen. I'm just saying he's not a very popular fella. It's no wonder they threw him into dungeon, right? That goes against everything you have in national pride, right? Letting them trounce on us. I like to talk about the Slovo-Bacanian flag, which is all white because nobody ever dared to die for their country. Never ever thought about it. It is also very convenient for surrendering. But no, it's if you want to know where Slovo-Bacania is, it's nestled in between the mountains of Idaho and Montana. They're very poor. Anyway, not a literal place. Please don't put that on any of your geography exams, okay? No, there's not a country in between there. Wow. Sorry, you have to put up with me tonight. But he had to face and do some things that put him in bad places. God's judgment, his life became an example of God's judgment and his promises in the future. He has set me, in verse 6, he has set me in dark places as they that be dead of old. He hath hedged me about that I cannot get out. He hath made my chain heavy. And when I cry and shout, he shutteth out my prayer. He hath enclosed my ways with hewn stone. He hath made my paths crooked. This is not a good place. He hath filled me with bitterness, in verse 15. He hath made me drunken with wormwood. He hath made also broken my teeth with gravel stones. He hath covered me with ashes. And though thou hast removed my soul far off from peace, I forgot prosperity. That's someone brought to the lowest part of their existence to realize, I can't do anything. I'll tell you, in things of this world, it's not hard to be brought to that place. Young people, you think that the world is over when the person they've been dating for the last 3 months breaks up with them. All of a sudden, that person can't eat for the next 5 days. And their only true love... We get to a place of desperation. Some people, it's finances. How in the world am I going to make this? Listen, I had this
I constantly have issues. I'm not a good landlord, brother. I'm not a good landlord. I don't collect. If I'm not hard on them if they're late with it, and it ends up being. And this month I was like, God, I don't know how, because I really could use $300 right now to make sure that everything works out. And I had to look today for my Social Security card. I was doing a job application. They told me to make sure to bring it, and I had to look for it. I haven't looked for that thing since I renewed my permit in 2018. So it normally, I won't tell you where I keep it that way. But I was having struggles finding it because it wasn't where I have kept it since I was 16. It wasn't there, and I'm like, what in the world did I do with this thing? And I was rifling through my drawer, and in my drawer, you know what I found? $300 just sitting in with my socks. And I was looking at it, I'm like, that would have been nice to have, and I'm thinking of all the times I could have used it. But you know when I needed it was right then. So it's like, okay, God, I'll not asking any more questions. That's God has a way of doing that. I had one time a year, and I was like, God, I don't know how. You're gonna have to provide a job or something that I can, an extra job or a side job or something. And I got a letter handed to me by my mom, and said this person just randomly gave me this envelope and said, give it to Daniel. And it was about $20 more than the amount I had promised, and that was left in the amount. I don't ask questions when God does things. I just say, okay, Lord, that's and get that with faith promise, by the way. God's going to tell you the amount that He wants you to give, and He'll make the way for you to give it. So just hold on. When God says it, just obey, and He'll find a way, and you get to enjoy the ride. But I've seen that constantly through time. Whether it was God providing me with a job that took care of my financial needs, and then what I promised Him. When I was at Bible college, it was that way. He took care of that. I'd saved up so much, enough to pay for basically a year of college by the time I got to the college, so I had about that much saved up. And I was like, God, all right, I have enough for college, but I promised you this for missions conference, for missions giving, so one or the other, something's going to end up going by the time we get to December if we're not careful here. And I looked for a job, nothing was going, and then the pastor tapped me on the shoulder and said, how would you like to help Mrs. Bolsley, the janitor, clean the school after, or just take out the trash, do a few things like that? And I'm like, sure, pastor, but when I get a job, I might have to find you might have to find someone else. He's like, all right. Stopped down by the payroll office, and I went, wait a minute, I get paid for this? And it ended up being enough to where I left the college with as much money as I basically went into the college with, and I was able to take care of missions conference. It was nothing more than that. I did not live high on the hog. My grocery budget was $15 a week. It was, we had to make it work. I think the Cosgroves brought me a giant bag of Cheetos one time, and I rationed those. I mean, we were like making that last. But God found ways of taking care of me through those things, and I got to experience that and enjoy that process by trusting Him. But a lot of times you have to be brought to a place of, I don't get it. I don't know how this is going to work out before you learn this. Jeremiah is in a place where he's like, I forgot prosperity. I don't know what it's like to have extravagances. Picture a United States where there's no cell phones, you can't afford the television, the cell phones. You're barely getting a piece of bread every day. You're just trying to find a way to subsist. That's world in a lot of countries where you're just trying to find a way to subsist. And I don't know what prosperity looks like anymore. You forget it. The guys that are working, I never forget the guys. I met a couple, they gave an area of their land to the church on an island that Pastor Walter, first missionary out of North Cebu Baptist Church, started on this island. And they gave him a piece of property, and I was there, and I asked him, what did they do? Because that's a big deal, giving a piece of land away. And they make gravel. Now, they make gravel by finding specific stones all around their island, carrying it back, and then breaking up that rock into itty-bitty stones by hand. They don't have any power tools. And they sell it in a grain feed bag, right? So you got a decent sized bag, and they sell that for about $3 a bag. Now, you know how much what I'm describing is miles of walking and carrying ridiculously heavy things, and then blister, hand bleeding type work that just is not. We at $3 a bag would laugh and give them $3 for us not to work. All right, that's just not. We wouldn't help with that. But that's what they did. It's a different world. Jeremiah says, I forget prosperity. And then he turns and said in verse 18, and I said, my strength and my hope is perished from the Lord. Remember mine affliction and my misery, the wormwood and the gall. My soul hath them still in remembrance and is humbled in me. He's like, God is gone. And when you have a mindset of God's going to give you things in prosperity, you're going to think He's gone at times. Where is He? Why don't I see Him? And the reality is He's there. He just doesn't work on your needs. You serve Him, not the other way around. We get this mixed up all the time. Don't picture you're at a drive-through when you picture you talking to God. It's not how that works. He's not on your call. Now, He's listening, but no is an answer and silence is an answer. But He's not going to do it just because you want it. Sometimes you're going to have to hear silence. And you're going to have to seek, okay, God, where do you want me to do? I think about the message I preached, I think it was the last time, where I talked about Paul with directions that he was not sure where he was supposed to go. And he had to hear a lot of no's and a lot of things on things that he desired. Sometimes you're going to have to take the no's on things you desire and could make happen. He could have traveled and made it happen. And he would have been doing it entirely in his power and without God's power. And what, Romans never gets written? Not by Paul. I think someone would have written something similar, because God obviously wanted it to happen. And then he said, this I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. Listen, in this place of torment, Jeremiah, the prophet of God, one of the only ones listening to him during this time, had to be called back to a remembrance. Don't doubt in darkness the things that God reveals in the light. There's times when you have moments when God gives you perfect clarity on this is what I need to do. Sometimes it's a conviction, a standard that you set up. Sometimes it's something you need to give up and stay away from. Sometimes it's a direction in your life, a call to preach, a call to the mission field. Something. So God gives you a direction, and this is how I want you to serve me. When things go bad, what you got to remember is what that light revealed. Don't worry about the darkness. Keep heading towards the light. And the NASCAR term, when there's a pileup and things going on, and you don't know, they say, hold the line. You don't know, there's no good weaving when you can't see, so you just hold the line, and you're basically hoping, because you're not stopping on a dime in those things. And so you hold the line and hope that it's going to be okay as you go through. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but you hold the line because that's the last thing that you saw that was clear, was that line. And in God's will, that's what you have to do. You have to hold the line in those times of, I don't know what's going to happen. Don't doubt those things. When you know that God loved you and He showed you and gave you a peace of mind on something, or a verse or a song or something that gave you comfort, cling to that. Write it down. Get it to where you're not going to forget it, because that's the light that He showed you. Hold that line. Know that He's going to take care of you. Don't try to make it happen yourself. I don't care how skilled the NASCAR driver is. If you can't see, you can't drive. Just the way it works. And so you can try and find ways of getting through, but the reality is your skill, your abilities will not prosper you a thing. I think that's one thing important to remember as we do things with, saving for future things down the road, is to remember, God, direct this. Would you tell me how you want me to use this? Where do you want me to put this? This is your money. What fund and what do you want me to put this in? And let Him direct it. And then with His will, He'll guide it exactly how He wants it to be used. But don't do it trying to be clever and figuring out on your strength how it's going to happen, because, when the stock market crashed, you'd think those people that knew so much all of a sudden thought they knew so much. All their trading in years of experience, the depression, and during that time, you really think that they're going to, that they thought they were experts after that? No, you had people committing suicide because they realized everything they had financially was gone. Don't trust in your own devices to make this happen. Trust God and let Him do it in every investment. In every investment. Don't, again, not willy-nilly just pray and hope that God's going to give you the money that you need to retire, or God's going to give you what you need. I don't think that that's very wise or biblical either. But you should be taking every decision into account for what you want for Him. And when He gives you a direction, follow it. And the things that he recalls to his mind is, it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. The things in this darkness that he has to remember is, listen, God's mercies are why I'm still here. I'm here on this earth for a reason, and God gave me His mercy to allow me to still be here. When Jeremiah stood up to the nation and they threw him in the dungeon, they could have just as easily shot him. Not literally, because obviously the gunpowder and all that was not exactly a thing. But they could have whacked his head off, they could have done anything to him, stoned him, he could have been gone. But God's will was not for him to be dead, so he needed to serve Him as it was. He needed to recall that it is the Lord's mercy that I am not consumed. You are here for a reason. And it's God's mercy that you're here. His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. I love waking up in the morning and being able to do devotions. It's just a morning thing. You wake up, you get if the weather's nice, you go outside and sit on the porch, or you by a tree or something. And if you really are spiritual, you have a cup of coffee near you, and you'll just ask God to show you something, and then you can get the day started right. Caffeine in Christ. We got this good. It's good stuff. Get the day started right, and then you can just turn it over to Him. A new start of the day, a breath of fresh air, knowing that God's going to be in control of this day. Great is thy faithfulness. Understand this, even when you cannot see the light, the path that He set you on. Maybe you say, Mr. Daniel, I don't even know what that path was. I don't know what He wants me to do in 5 years. That's okay. That's okay. Take what you do know. If you know this is wrong, avoid it. If you know this is right, well, 2 + 2 equals, not Common Core. We're just going to add up and try to do what we know is right today, and God's going to keep guiding us towards that. And we're going to trust His mercies to make sure that our path is going to be okay. His faithfulness will be there through that day. You might have a bad day that's going to come up at work. Oh, I tell you, I had a day last week, and I was dreading going to work. I was just dreading it. I had to have a conversation with my boss. I knew it was going to be a rough conversation because I was frustrated, and it was wrong, and I had been wronged, and I was, blood boiling all night, in the morning. I'm getting ready for work, and I don't want to do this, because if I do this, I'm going to be in the flesh right now, because I'm not right. And I knew I wasn't right, so I had to wait. I actually was late that day going to work because I was sitting in my car doing a drive and talking to God until I felt good enough to go to work. I'll take the point. It is what it is. Your testimony is worth a little bit, all right? But I knew it was going to be a rough day. I knew it's the way it's going to be. And so I had to take a minute to realize God's going to still be there, and regardless of the outcome of this, we're going to keep serving. And we got to do what's right regardless of what's going on around us. Regardless of whether the people around you are trying to throw you into prison or whether they are trying, well, that might literally be the case before too long. Jeremiah faced that, but we might also see it. Regardless of whether they are going to be on your side or not, you have a responsibility to do what's right. Other people's sin is not your excuse to not serve God. Don't do it for the other people. You have to stay faithful to Him. I don't see Him. Find Him. There's a still small voice, just like with Elijah, that wants to speak to you. And He oftentimes will use this to speak to you in those moments, by the way. Because He's not going to leave you alone. He's going to have something for you that will get you through that day. It's amazing what God can do for you on those bad days to show you that He cares for you. My boss gave me a hug that day. That was amazing. I was just like, weird. Things that I'm in control. As the rivers of waters, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of waters, He turneth it whithersoever He will. God's got this, whatever the situation will be. Stop figuring it out yourself because you're just disappointing Him. The Lord is my portion, saith the Lord, therefore will I hope in Him. The Lord is good unto them that wait for Him, to the soul that seeketh Him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. I understand. Jeremiah understands being down. Understands having that moment of doubt where you don't know what God's going to do. But the reality is, at the end of the day, you still have to do what's right. You still have to put your trust and say, God, I don't know if this is going to work, but this is what I think is right. You're not telling me any different, so I'm going to take this step. And as you allow me, I'll keep walking that direction. And you just got to guide me, because at this point, Lord, I can't try to figure it out. My brain is fried. If you've had those days. And watch as God takes those efforts and just lets you take another step and another step. And eventually, it might not be real soon. You might have to have a few days in those valleys of death. But eventually, you will see the Lord's goodness. You will see His faithfulness and know that He was with you all the time through those dark valleys, all the time through those shadows, all the time through those times when you thought He wasn't there and you didn't see His direction. He was guiding you. He had that beacon right there. You just had to not doubt it when you couldn't see it. There, it was shining. It was the path. It was the guidance. It was what was going to get you home. And you just had to follow. He's there. Make sure your hope is in the Lord. Remember that God's faithfulness is great and that His mercies renew every morning. No matter what you face on a daily basis, no matter what the temptations for sin, no matter what the struggles are, God says, follow me, do what's right. I am going to be faithful. And I'll be good to those that put their trust in me. But you have to take that step of faith on the next one. And then watch as God constantly reveals Himself to you. All right. Pass out the prayer sheets. Sorry, I went a little long on that one. Jonah, do me a favor, see how long Mrs. Kohler has. I need one of those, guys. Will, I'm stealing yours. Thank you. Any updates? Brother Curlin's grandson, came home today. I don't know if you guys got that on the prayer circle call, but that's a wonderful thing. Looks all happy and smiling. That's a great face to see. Okay. Any other update? Elizabeth, had, to my knowledge, as of before the service, had not given birth to the child. Let's keep praying for her. Yes.
Pray for Rodney. He's pulled
Pray for Brother Rodney. That's...
Marilyn McCullough. She was in the hospital. She is home now, but she's not well at all.
It's number 25, in need of healing. Pray for her. Call her if you can. That would be a blessing. She would enjoy that. I mean, obviously pay attention to whether she's sounding weak and maybe not make it a prolonged call. But listen, when people are alone, they just need to know somebody's there.
Her daughter is there, I guess, and someone else is staying with her at night, so.
Good. Good.
Anyone else? Lane is good. He's not had any further complications. He had a rough day, but it was not bad enough to get him back to the hospital on that day, so that's, praise the Lord for that and His mercies there. Any other updates or new prayer requests?
And are there any that can be removed? Because we're running out of room.
Are they downstairs or upstairs? Okay.
Number 1 can be removed. Chris's Uncle Jim's done with his physical therapy and got a clean bill of health from both doctors out of Pittsburgh last week. So
He's doing well.
he's doing really, really well.
Number 40, you can take number 40 off my brother. He's doing pretty well.
Good. Number 40 in need of healing. Yes, John.
You can probably take 20 off. I'm feeling a lot better.
All right.
Yeah. Able to eat some stuff.
But all his wisdom's gone, so pray for him.
You can take 18 off. She still has to get fillings next week.
Ooh, that's not fun. Keep. Praise the Lord. Teeth trouble are not fun. Yes.
Take 31 off. My dad, he's not the greatest of health, but he's okay right now.
Okay. All right. Any other prayer requests? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Terry.
Just add my mom,
Okay.
Shirley Kohler. I remember what it was exactly. They think she had a really mild little stroke. She didn't actually lose any mobility, but she lost some. I guess she's doing physical therapy right now, so.
That's good. Anyone else? Pray for Pastor as he travels back up tonight. I can't think of anything else. Anyone else? All right, let's take a minute to break up into our groups and pray. Teens, stay here, pray.